Venom has been a hot ticket item for Marvel Comics for many years now. His merchandise and his comics usually sell like hotcakes, so it's no surprise at all that for many years, attempts were made to get a Venom movie off the ground. After a failed attempt to do a Venom movie with Dolph Lundgren in the 90s, and then another with Topher Grace in the 2000s, Sony finally thought that they had their project reached in the early 2010s, with a new movie that would have taken place in the Amazing Spider-Man universe. So, what if it happened? After the untimely cancellation of Spider-Man 4, Sony decided to reboot the entire Spider-Man franchise, starting with 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man. After the success of the Avengers that same year, Sony grew ambitious to craft their own rival cinematic universe, one that would revolve around Spider-Man and his villains. And one of the earliest planned projects was actually a leftover from the Raimi era, a Venom solo movie. You see, after plans for a Topher Grace Venom movie ultimately fell through, Sony decided it was time to bring in new people and write a brand new Venom project, a Venom project that would be in the same universe as the TASM movies. They would hire Josh Trank, fresh off his success on the found footage superhero movie Chronicle, and Robert Siegel, director of Big Fan, to pen a new script for this movie. The movie also would have been produced by Matt Tolmach and Avi Arad. Now, casting the part of Venom never really went anywhere concrete, but names that were regularly being tossed around for the role were Finn Wittrock, who would go on to make appearances in La La Land, Unbroken, and Judy, or Channing Tatum of Magic Mike and 21 Jump Street fame. Also, his main love interest was seemingly going to be Betty Brant, who would have been played by Olivia Wilde. Carnage was always the main contender for the villain, with Alan Tudyk being in talks as a possibility for the role. Trank pitched a Venom movie that would have had a hard R rating, and the plan was seemingly to introduce the Venom symbiote as well as the character of Eddie Brock in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and follow a similar plotline to Spider-Man 3. Peter would bond with the symbiote when he's at his emotional worst. He's feeling the guilt of dating Gwen after promising her father before that he wouldn't. So now somehow the symbiote actually would transfer to Eddie and set us up for the Josh Trank Venom movie. However, these plans were all scuppered by Matt Tolmach, who apparently loathed the idea of an R-rated Venom movie, since the main Spider-Man movies were decidedly more family-friendly. Now, Tolmach and Trank would argue heavily about this. In the end, Trank decided to exit the project altogether, and instead accept an offer from 20th Century Fox to direct a reboot of the Fantastic Four, which we can all agree was just the greatest non-MCU Marvel movie of the 2010s. Absolutely. Ultimately, plans were changed to instead hold off on featuring Eddie Brock or the Venom symbiote for either The Amazing Spider-Man 3 or a Sinister Six movie. Alex Kurtzman, Ed Solomon, and Roberto Orci would be hired to write the film, with Arad and Tolmach still set to produce, and Kurtzman set to direct. At one point, the plan seemingly would have been to debut Eddie as a rival photographer for Peter at the Daily Bugle, just like in Spider-Man 3. He would have been secretly trying to get snapshots of Black Suit Spider-Man fighting against the Sinister Six inside Oscorp Industries. Peter would then get rid of the black suit when the Sinister Six tell him, and I'm not kidding here, that the suit looks stupid on him. Because yeah, there's no need for remorse about the actions he's done while he's wearing the black suit. No, just tell him it looks stupid. That's a good enough reason. Either way, as dumb as that sounds, this would be enough to get the symbiote off of Peter, and it would attach itself to Eddie Brock, setting up the standalone movie where he would possibly be involved with Betty Brant and fight against Carnage. And funny enough, Emma Stone was actually considered to play Carnage. She would be revived from the dead using Spider-Man's blood, which she gave to her while he was wearing the Venom suit. The symbiote, combined with his blood, causes her to become Carnage, and forces Spider-Man and Venom to team up and defeat her. Also, the Sandman may have been possibly a secondary villain in this movie, and supposedly would have been played by future Venom actor Tom Hardy. However, these plans would also end up being cancelled after The Amazing Spider-Man 2 underperformed at the box office due to poor word of mouth combined with being sandwiched between Captain America the Winter Soldier and X-Men Days of Future Past. Sony therefore decided, after initially planning to just try and turn the TASM universe around, to just cancel the TASM universe instead. Ultimately, we would finally get a Venom movie in 2018 that featured a different cast and director and didn't feature Spider-Man whatsoever. The movie ended up being a smash hit, received a sequel 3 years later, and is now apparently getting a third movie as well, proving that Sony were right to persist with this project for as long as they did. It did end up being worth it for them in the end. So what do I think of the Venom movie in the TASM universe? Mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I sort of like it. On another hand, I don't. Let me explain. The idea of Gwen Stacy being brought back to life as Carnage, I don't hate that idea, actually. I just don't like the idea of it being in a Venom movie, because, Eddie Brock wasn't around when Gwen Stacy was still alive. He wasn't in the first two Amazing Spider-Man movies, you know what I mean? Or three, if they were going to make the Amazing Spider-Man prequel that they were saying they were going to do. I don't know. Whatever. Eddie Brock was not going to be in those. So, it just doesn't feel right to do a storyline that big in a movie that, that stars a character that had nothing to do with that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be better served in, like, an Amazing Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 4, or Sinister 6, or, like, a bigger movie than Venom. You know what I mean? Like, a movie more Peter Parker-centric. And not to mention, I can't help but be a little bit worried about the idea of Spider-Man being in this. Because, yeah, a lot of people complained about doing a Venom movie without Spider-Man in it, and I understand that. But, like, I also get why they chose not to try doing that, because a lot of people complain that Iron Man was kind of overshadowing Spider-Man in Spider-Man Homecoming, and that's despite the fact that, no offense, Iron Man is never going to be as popular as Spider-Man, just honestly. But now you have to think about it this way, because sadly, I know I said Venom is a hot ticket item, and he is, but he's not ever going to be on the same level as Spider-Man in popularity. He's just not. And I'm really worried that Spider-Man would overshadow the hell out of him if he was in his movie. Just honestly. So, yeah, those are some issues I have with it, I admit. Not to mention, there's the fact that the Amazing Spider-Man movies, or at least the second one, and hearing from the plans of, like, TASM 3 and the Sinister 6 movie, it sounds like they weren't going to learn their lesson about this. The idea of having a movie that's basically a trailer for more movies. And, that's basically what TASM 2 was, and I have no reason to believe that the Venom movie would be any different. I imagine that this movie would have set up a bunch of other stuff that's going to happen way later, like a bunch of other Venom Spider-Man team-ups in the future. Maybe they would have given, Venom a different love interest. Maybe they would have teased the arrival of other symbiotes like, Riot or whatever. Maybe if they did go with Gwen Stacy, they would have had Cletus Cassidy cameo and then set up Venom 2 with Cletus Cassidy Carnage as the villain. I just feel like this movie would do too much. Like, I have a feeling that would be far less self-contained than the Tom Hardy one. And that was one of the things I liked about the Tom Hardy one, is that it didn't have to do with anything else. I kind of miss superhero movies that you don't have to watch like a bajillion other movies first. You know what I mean? I feel like that's something the Tom Hardy one benefited from, and that's something I think would weaken this one. Now, as far as Finn Wittrock being Venom goes, I don't think he's a bad choice. I mean, he was on American Horror Story. I think he could pull it off. He's not exactly my number one choice, but he does look the part, and I think he could act the part with the right people behind him. So, yeah, I'm okay with Finn Wittrock as Venom, honestly, or Eddie Brock, whatever you prefer. And as far as Channing Tatum, I should mention him. No, I'm sorry. I can't picture it, because he's just a little too charming, in my opinion. Like, I'm not saying Eddie Brock can't be charming, but that's just not how I picture him. You know what I mean? I just, when I heard Channing Tatum was going to play Gambit, I thought that was a better role for him, because that's a suave character. Venom is not a suave character, and I don't think that Venom as a character plays to Channing Tatum's strong suits. So, I like Channing Tatum. I like his work for the most part, but I just don't think Venom would have been right for him. I'm sorry. Finn Wittrock, if I had to choose between them, I definitely would have gone with Finn Wittrock, which is why I showed his face a hell of a lot more than Channing Tatum's in this video. So yeah, I don't think a TASM set Venom movie would be bad. I think it has potential. I definitely think that Josh Trank actually could have done a good Venom movie. I know he gets a lot of flack for, the Fantastic Four reboot, which, just for the record, I was being sarcastic when I said that movie was the greatest non-MCU movie. That movie's really, really bad, actually. It's probably the worst superhero movie of the 2010s. But I don't think that's his fault. Like, I know apparently he may or may not have been on drugs when he made that movie, but, there was still a bunch of studio interference, and I've seen Chronicle, and Chronicle was a really good movie, like, a really, really good movie. It's so fresh compared to, like, the DCEU and the MCU, or the TASMU, you know what I mean? It was so different feeling, and I think Josh Trank honestly could have made a really good Venom movie, and at the very least, I think that his Venom movie would have been better than his Fantastic Four movie, so there's at least that. that. Not to mention, at least he wanted his to be rated R, and I think that the actual Venom movies keep making that stupid mistake of making it PG-13. Stop making it PG-13, please, okay? We can handle rated R. Please, make it rated R. But at the same time, I can understand why Matt Tolmach didn't want it to be rated R, because, you know, it's like, you know, now we're like, you know, Disney's doing Deadpool 3, and it's going to be in the MCU, and it's kind of hard to imagine how they're going to do it, because, like, they're going to ask kids to watch all these MCU movies and then not watch Deadpool 3 because it's rated R. It's just, it's confusing, and I can understand why they would be a little reluctant to do that here, but then again, the TASM movies were always a bit grittier. Like, the first one was obviously trying to be Spider-Man's Dark Knight, and even the second movie had scarier scenes. Like, both movies were rated PG-13, so, like, I still think it's a darker franchise, and they could have gotten away with a rated R Venom movie, but I understand why they ultimately shot it down. But I do think that Josh Trank's Venom would have been a sight to see. But overall, despite the fact that I think this idea has ups and downs, I'm still a little bit sad that the Amazing Spider-Man universe didn't, you know, go ahead as planned, because it was interesting. And as I said, I think it's a universe that has a lot of potential to be great. And who knows, maybe we'll see it again one day. Maybe Sony will try again in like 10 or 20 years. We'll have to wait and see when Tom Holland finally stops being Spider-Man, what Sony will do, you know, because obviously, you know, they're probably going to take Spider-Man back eventually and try to do this over again. So it'll be interesting to see if they've learned their lesson from the TASM movies. But either way, let me know in the comments down below, would you have liked to see Finn Wittrock or Channing Tatum in a Venom movie set in the TASM universe? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments down below. Also, give me more what-if recommendations in the comments down below about The Amazing Spider-Man, regular Spider-Man, Marvel, anything you can think of. Just let me know in the comments down below what you want me to do, and I'll try to do it. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and share it with all of your friends on all your various social media platforms, and I'll see all of you in the next video.